Welcome back to Wander and Wonder. Today I wanted to talk about how our language slowly evolves and we're able to take on more abstract topics, especially those in the realm of metaphysics. But as a result of this phenomenon of evolving language, we can find our consciousness drifting to concepts that do not exist in this physical world, in this world around us, and instead find ourselves lost in abstraction, which is only an idea or a representation of something that is real, a symbol for something that is real. That is essentially language. So although language is used as a tool to communicate complex ideas, it is only through the understanding of these symbols and the application of that understanding to find true meaning. The meaning is not in the words. The meaning is not the words, just like the energy is not the wire. So as language evolves from a primitive form, we've been able to take on more and more ideas, to create different mental frameworks across different cultures. We have ideas like free will, like good and evil, like the afterlife, like the supernatural. And we've had names for personifications of forces, like gods of the wind, gods of thunder, gods of rain, gods of water, different elements, different elemental spirits, you could say. Like even gnomes are an earth elemental spirit. So these are personifications of forces. And it's interesting that a strong enough belief in the personification of a force can render something to exist in a subjective perception, influenced by a cross-cultural or like a somewhat objective, I guess like a status quo, kind of like a mutually accepted worldview as truth. You may actually begin to personify forces of nature. So I don't know exactly what I think about gnomes. I do think they're real, but this is one way that I have thought about it as an actual possibility. I also think that it's interesting that because of the lack of immediacy that new words have to describe metaphysical terms, it's like I've personally read, and I think I believe that ancient cultures, the ancient books of alchemy, occult magic, esotericism in general, have used symbols to communicate metaphysical ideas, and we can start to see a symbology, like a universal language, when we begin to examine its use in art, and it's interesting to see like this universal language. I think of it like swords representing an intellect, or like a wound to the chest, a spear wound to the chest, even representing like the death of the Savior. The dove as a symbol of peace. How did it come to be a symbol of peace? even just the bird, with 2 heads, as it feeds from the right and the left. We can see an ancient method of communication in symbols, but again, if you fail to understand the symbols, you're not able to have a clear picture of what's trying to be communicated. Just as if you don't understand the language, you're not going to be able to receive or transmit certain ideas. And it is not the words themselves that are real, but the concepts that they represent. Which leads me to my next point, which is something that I personally have been railing against in my own mind, struggling with for years, and that is an authentic picture of an up-to-date worldview, spiritually informed, Gnostic, but not Christian heretics, but just informed by personal experience. And that is to say, to contextualize every psychedelic experience that I've had, those of complete forgetting of identity, complete forgetting and perceived lack of form, sense of belonging, sense of somewhere outside of here, and a familiarity. I don't want this to be a trip report, wander and wonder, but essentially what I've been railing against is I guess you could call it California spiritualism, which is in a lot of ways influenced by the classic psychedelic speakers like McKenna, Richard Alpert, Alan Watts, Tim Leary, Allen Ginsberg, the Beat Generation as a whole. Anyone that brought psychedelia into the mainstream consciousness. You could even say Tavistock Institute, bands like The Doors, The Grateful Dead, The Beatles. These were the groups at the time that brought psychedelia to the mainstream, and it would be the language that was developed in large part by the authors that surrounded the movement and popular speakers such as McKenna. It's the language that developed as a result of those people and those cultures that define the reality that people find themselves in now. And just like I said before, it is my belief that a strong enough belief in any worldview, in any metaphysical structure, can actually foment a real picture in the perception of the believer. That is to say, if a personification of an earth spirit is believed in strong enough, then a gnome may appear and you may interact with it as if it is your reality. So I've seen words like the Akashic record, like Kundalini, like meditation, and a lot of these are Eastern concepts that are imported, but it's almost passe. It's been Westernized. You can think of just energy. You can think of enlightenment, of awakening, of third eye, of grounding, of sacral chakra sunning, of all of these ideas, of the center of the flower mandala, the ayahuasca trips where you are to meet the great earth mother, a somewhat leviathan dragon spirit in nature, that seems to be the archetypal vision of the trip. But it seems to me that any preconceived notion of any trip or any archetype or any form, will beget somewhat of a condition where one experiences that concept. If all you've read is DMT trips and you think, oh, I'm going to go under, I'm going to see the flower mandala, and then I'm going to meet entities and I'm going to wake up on an operating table, it's hard to distinguish between archetypal experience and pre-embedded information. And when I see the systems at play, especially in that part of the world, in southwestern California, Silicon Valley, kind of like the more progressive, not just politically but technologically, even you could say spiritually, as our civilization at large is moving further away from its Christian roots, at least in the West, demographically speaking. You can see like that form of spirituality beginning to take place, and pretty much what I would like to experience is a reality influenced by my own experience, something where my preconceived notions of how things are can be thrown away, and that I can see things actually for how they are. I can feel things actually for how they are, and there is no blame, like on any external force. There's simply an awareness that it exists, and a refusal to consent to the powers which would have you influenced by what they're throwing down, by what they're putting down. So this is another discussion on insulation, but also a discussion on awareness of certain trends, certain expectations, that this type of thing, this archetype, this experience is like what you're meant to experience. You take mushrooms and like, oh yeah, like don't look at yourself in the mirror because like you're gonna shake around and it's so trippy, like people like melting and stuff. Like you should really give all of those ideas, all of those concepts, just a rinse, and just realize that these are ancient things, ancient forms of consciousness, and even just consciousness itself as something that's evolved to, I would think that, there's a spiritual component beyond survival, but in a way we're only able to perceive as much as is useful to us to maintain our survival. And when it becomes clear that we're safe, when it becomes clear that we're grounded, when we can be still, we can perceive more. And there are things which can influence states of consciousness to expand it, to experience more, to experience things on a deeper level. And it really is my belief that somebody who is moving very quickly through life, from task to task, in a hurry, going nowhere, or like a hamster running in a wheel, they are not going to be able to perceive a greater reality. There's only the wheel, and there's only a feeling of balance and trying not to fall out. And now there is a certain meditation in these flow states of action, of doing things. It feels great. There's something inherently great, undeniable about getting a nice flow state, working on something consistently. But there has to be a rest in between. There has to be something to distinguish action from rest. This is another duality that we can see in our life. I'm obsessed with these different dualities. So there's to be asleep, and there's to wake up. There's the feeling of having woken up, and whether that's a realization of an idea or the beginning of your life, this is another duality, that competes with, I would say, like being wrong about something, or just falling asleep, or dying, the end, This is another duality, and I'm all about the reconciliation of opposites here. This has become a theme in my life. And another one is like, I really want to be like a super hip artist, like psychedelic dude, but I also like really kind of get like the whole like Christian right-wing thing sometimes. So yeah, like to reconcile like those two things in my own life is like a huge, and also like I like to be like an intellectual, like explore ideas, abstract concepts and things like that. But I'm also just I really like to chill, just hang back, like do what normal people do. There's a peace in that, people have, and culturally I'm obligated. I feel like there are certain things that we're built to enjoy. We're meant to enjoy them, but we're not, like we shouldn't let anything take over our lives. Anyways, Stay manageable out there, folks. That's all for today.